Have you ever stopped to think about how noisy our lives have become? I don't just mean the sounds of cars honking outside or the chatter of people all around us. I mean the noise that fills our heads, the constant distractions, the endless flood of notifications, the demands on our time, our energy, and our attention. It's everywhere, isn't it? It follows us from the moment we wake up to the moment we try to fall asleep. Our phones buzz before we've even brushed our teeth, and they keep buzzing long after we've turned out the lights. It's almost as if the world is pulling us in 1,000 different directions, all at once. Social media tells us one thing. Our jobs tell us another. We're expected to be available 24/7, constantly plugged in and on top of everything, whether it's the latest news, a friend's new post, or the next big project at work. And that's just on the surface. Beneath all that, there's this deeper pressure, isn't there? The pressure to keep moving forward, to achieve more, to do more. But have you ever asked yourself, in the middle of all this noise, how much of it actually matters? I mean, really matters. Do we ever stop and think about why we're chasing all these things? Or if they're worth chasing at all? Or have we become so caught up in the rush that we've forgotten to ask the most important question of all? What are we really doing this for? We're constantly told to stay busy, that being busy is a badge of honor. It's easy to confuse busyness with productivity, but they're not the same thing, are they? We fill our schedules, racing from one task to the next, one meeting to another. But at the end of the day, how often do we feel fulfilled? How often do we feel like we've spent our time wisely? If we're honest with ourselves, a lot of us are running on autopilot, checking boxes without stopping to think why we're checking them in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with working hard, nothing wrong with ambition. But when was the last time we paused long enough to ask ourselves if we're working toward the right? You see, modern life is a way of convincing us that everything is urgent, that every little task demands our immediate attention. It tricks us into thinking that every email is life or death, that every social media post deserves a response, that we need to be everywhere, doing everything, all at once. But how many of these things, if we're being honest, are truly important? What would happen if we let a few of them go? Would the world stop spinning? Would we lose ourselves? Or would we find that maybe, just maybe, we've been holding on to things that were never really asked to carry in the first place? Think about it. How often do we say yes to things we don't even care about? How often do we agree to take on more, to do more, just because we feel like we have to, because we think it's expected of us, because we don't want to let someone down, or because we're afraid of missing out? And how often do we look back at the end of the day, exhausted, and realize that we spent our time on things that didn't really matter to us at all? If everything was stripped away, if all the distractions, all the noise, all the unnecessary pressures vanished, what would be left? What would still hold meaning? What would still be important to you? For some of you, that might be family. For others, it could be your health, your personal growth, your passions. But I guarantee you, if you take a moment to really think about it, a lot of the things we stress over daily wouldn't even make. And yet we give those things our time, our energy, and sometimes even our peace of mind. Isn't it strange how we let the least important things dominate our days, while the things that truly matter often fall to the side, waiting for someday? But here's the truth. Someday never comes unless we make it happen. We have to take a step back, sift through the clutter, and make the conscious decision to focus on what really matters. I'll share a little story with you. A friend of mine years ago was the perfect example of someone who had it all. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Successful job, big house, all the latest gadgets, always on the move, always. But one day, he told me something that caught me off guard. He said, I feel like I'm losing control of my own life. I'm doing everything, and yet it feels like I'm accomplishing nothing. That hit me, because it's easy to confuse being busy with being effective. And that's exactly what had happened to him. He was so wrapped up in doing everything that he'd lost sight of the few things that actually mattered. And it wasn't until he made a conscious choice to start saying no to the things that didn't serve him, didn't fulfill him, that he began to feel a sense of peace again. It wasn't easy, but the moment he started letting go of the distractions, he found himself able to give more of his time and energy to the people and passions that mattered most. All not story. The simple, bold truth that many of us forget. We cannot focus on everything. We need to focus on the right thing. So I ask you now, what are you focusing on? What is taking up your time, your energy? Are those things truly important? Or are they just noise, distracting you from what really matters? You see, when we don't stop to question our actions, we end up living a life dictated by the outside world. But when we take the time to reflect, to quiet the noise, to ask ourselves what's truly important, we start living life on our own. And that, my friends, is where true freedom lies. Let's not wait until it's too late to realize that. Let's start now. Take a moment right now and ask yourself, what matters most to me? What am I giving my attention to that doesn't deserve it? And how can I refocus on the things that truly... Because once we start asking those questions, we begin to see life through a new lens, a clearer lens, a lens that filters out the noise and lets us see what's truly important. When we talk about distractions, it's easy to point the finger outward, isn't it? It's the phone that keeps pinging, the endless stream of emails, the demands from work, social media, advertisements, all those external things pulling us in different directions. And while those things certainly contribute to the chaos in our mind, let me ask you this. Are they the real problem? Or is the true source of distraction much closer to... What if I told you that? More often than not, the greatest distractions don't come from the outside world. No, they come from within. They come from us, from our own thoughts, our fears, our doubts, our need for constant validation. The truth is, we're often our own worst enemy. It's not just the world that's noisy, it's our own minds. We allow ourselves to be consumed by things that deep down we know aren't important. We allow ourselves to get caught up in trivialities, to chase things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't hold real value. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you found yourself distracted, not by your phone or by a noisy room, but by your own thoughts, by your worries about what others think of you, by the need to prove yourself, to keep up appearances, to check off boxes that society has placed in front of you? How many times have you stayed up late? Not because of some external pressure, but because you couldn't quiet your mind. Because your thoughts were racing, replaying conversations, imagining scenarios, worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. We live in a world where we're constantly being told what should matter to us. But here's the question I want you to consider. Are we chasing what we think matters or what truly does? Are we running after things because we believe they'll bring us happiness and fulfillment, or because we've been conditioned to believe they will? Let me share a story with you, one I think many of you might relate to. It's about a man named John, a successful corporate executive who, by all accounts, had made it. He had the big house, the luxury car, the corner office. From the outside, it looked like John had everything anyone could want. But on the inside, he was restless. Despite all his success, he felt like something was missing, like he was constantly chasing something just beyond his reach. He couldn't figure out what it was, so he did what many of us do. He doubled down. He worked harder, stayed later at the office, took on more projects, and set his sights on even bigger goals. But no matter how much he achieved, the feeling of emptiness remained. One day, John took a break from the whirlwind of his life and asked himself a question he had avoided for years. Why am I doing this? What am I really chasing? And for the first time, he realized he'd been chasing things that didn't truly matter to him. The promotions, the accolades, the material possessions, they had seemed important because everyone around him said they were. But deep down, they weren't the things that brought him joy or fulfillment. John was living someone else's version of success, not his own. So, he made a decision that surprised everyone. He stepped away from the high-powered career he had built, downsized his lifestyle, and began focusing on the things that truly mattered to him, spending time with his family, pursuing his passion for art, and giving back to his community. It wasn't easy, and it certainly wasn't what the world expected of him. But for the first time in years, John felt like he was living his life on his terms. He was no longer distracted by what society said he should want. He had refocused on what really mattered to him. John's story is just one example, but it speaks to a larger truth that many of us experience. We think we're chasing what matters, but in reality, we're often distracted by the expectations of others, by the desire for approval, or by the need to feel like we're keeping up with everyone else. It's easy to get caught up in the rat race, constantly comparing ourselves to others, constantly striving for more, without stopping to ask if more is really what we need. What are you chasing? Is it something that truly aligns with your values, your purpose, your passion? Or is it something that you've been conditioned to believe is important? Are you pursuing what you truly want, or are you simply trying to keep up with the noise around you? I remember meeting a woman at a seminar not too long ago. She was a high achiever in her career, worked long hours, traveled constantly, and had a reputation for being the best at what she did. But when we got to talking, she told me something I'll never forget. She said, "I'm so tired. I spent the last 10 years climbing this corporate ladder, but now that I'm here, I realize I was climbing the wrong one." She had been so focused on achieving what she thought was success that she never stopped to ask if it was the right kind of success for her. Does that sound familiar to anyone here? How many of us are climbing the wrong ladder, racing toward goals that don't truly fulfill us? It's a sobering thought, isn't it? But here's the good news. We don't have to keep climbing the wrong ladder. We don't have to keep chasing things that don't matter. We can stop. We can refocus. It's not about giving up on ambition or success. Far from it. It's about being intentional with our focus. It's about cutting through the noise and the distractions, both external and internal, and asking ourselves, what do I really want? What truly matters? Once we answer those questions, honestly, we can begin to align our lives with what's truly important. We can start making choices that bring us real fulfillment rather than just temporary satisfaction. Let me tell you about a famous figure. Many of you know Steve Jobs. At the height of his success, Steve was a visionary, a business icon, someone who had achieved incredible things. But later in life, he became known not just for his innovation, but for his intense focus on what really mattered to him. He famously said, "Focusing is about saying no." Steve wasn't just talking about saying no to distractions in the workplace. He understood that in order to truly focus on what matters, you have to be willing to let go of what doesn't, even if those things seem important to everyone else. So, where does that leave us? How do we break free from the distractions, especially the ones that come from within, and refocus on what truly matters? It starts with self-awareness. We have to recognize the distractions for what they are. We have to take a hard look at our lives and ask ourselves if the things we're spending our time and energy on are really worth it. Are they leading us toward the life we want to live, or are they pulling us away from it? Once we've identified the distractions, the next step is to let go of them. And I won't pretend that's easy. It's hard to break old habits, hard to say no to things we've been conditioned to say yes to. But the freedom that comes with it is worth every ounce of effort. When we stop chasing what we think matters, we create space for what truly does. Think about this for a moment. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need more stuff, more success, more attention. But the truth is, the things that bring us real value in life are the things we can't measure or put in a bank account. They're the things that no one else can see, but we can feel in our hearts and minds. We know what truly matters: love, purpose, peace of mind. Why do we spend so much time chasing after the things that don't? Why do we let ourselves get distracted by the pursuit of external success, when what we really want is internal fulfillment? Part of it, I think, is because it's easier to measure the external. It's easier to look at a bank balance or a job title or the number of followers we have on social media and say, this is success. But internal fulfillment, that's harder to quantify. It's not something you can check off a list. It requires us to dig deeper, to reflect, be honest with ourselves about what we truly want. Let me share a quick story that illustrates this point. A few years ago, I met a man who had built a wildly successful business. By all accounts, he had everything: wealth, recognition, power. But when we sat down to talk, he admitted something that surprised me. He said, "I've spent my whole life climbing the ladder of success, and now that I'm at the top, I'm not sure I like the view." What he meant was that in chasing what he thought would bring him happiness, he'd lost sight of the things that actually brought him fulfillment: his relationships, his health, his sense of purpose. He was successful, yes, but he wasn't fulfilled. And that's a key distinction. So, how do we shift our focus from the external to the internal? How do we start prioritizing what really matters? It starts with clarity. We have to take the time to reflect on our lives, to ask ourselves those tough questions. What do I value most? What brings me joy? What do I want my life to stand for? These aren't questions we can answer in a single sit. They require ongoing reflection. But once we begin to clarify our values, we can start making decisions that align with them. The next step is action. It's not enough to just think about what matters. We have to act on it. If relationships are important to us, we need to invest time in them. If peace of mind is what we seek, we need to make choices that reduce stress and bring us. If purpose is what drives us, we need to pursue work and activities that give us a sense of meaning. And finally, we have to be willing to let go of the things that don't align with our values. This is perhaps the hardest part because it means saying no to the distractions, the societal pressures, and sometimes even the things we've worked hard to achieve. But when we let go of what doesn't matter, we make room for what truly does. So now that we've talked about what holds real value, the question is, how do we focus on it? How do we keep our eyes on the things that matter and resist the pull of the distractions around us? That's where we're headed next, because knowing what matters is one thing. Living in alignment with those values is another. But here's the truth. When we focus on what truly holds value, life becomes richer, deeper, and more fulfilling. And isn't that what we're all really after? Now that we've explored what holds real value in life, I want to turn the focus back to you. We've all been caught up in the rush of everyday life, constantly chasing after one thing or another. But how often do we stop and ask ourselves, what are my true priorities? What is it that I personally value above everything else? It's a simple question, but I guarantee that answering it isn't always easy. It's easy to confuse what the world tells us is important with what we truly value. We're told to prioritize success, achievement, and recognition, but when we strip away those external influences, what is left? What are your true priorities? Let's take a moment to reflect. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to really think about it. Not just on the surface, but dig deeper. First, when was the last time you felt truly fulfilled? Not just happy for a moment, but that deep sense of satisfaction, like everything in your life was aligned. What were you doing? Who were you with? What part of your life were you nurturing? What are the things in your life that, when they are missing, you feel incomplete? What's the one thing you couldn't live without? Not material possessions, but people, passions, or values. If you knew that you only had a limited amount of time left on this earth, what would you spend that time doing? Would it be the work that keeps you up at night, the social media scrolling that eats away your time, the endless errands and tasks? Or would it be something else? Would it be spending time with the people you love, working on something that truly matters to you, or simply being at peace with yourself? These are hard questions to answer, and they're not the kinds of questions we can answer in a single sitting. But starting to ask me is the first step toward real clarity about what matters to you. Not to the world, not to your job, not to society, but to you personally. Because once you identify your true priorities, everything else starts to fall into place. Here's something practical. You can try to help you clarify what your personal values are. I call it the perfect day exercise. Close your eyes and imagine that you have complete control over every hour of your day. There are no external demands, no responsibilities pulling you in different directions. How would you spend that day? From the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed, what would it look like? What activities would you do? Who would you spend time with? What kind of work, if any, would you engage in? Would you create something, learn something, rest, or connect with others? This exercise is so powerful because it forces you to think about what really matters to you when all the noise of life is stripped away. It helps you get a clearer picture of what your true priorities are. Not the ones imposed on you by others, but the ones that are genuinely yours. And once you know what those are, it becomes easier to make choices that align with them. You see, every distraction, every interruption takes a little piece of your attention. And when your attention is divided across too many things, it's impossible to give your best to any of them. This is why setting boundaries is so important. Boundaries with your time, your energy, and yes, even your technology. It's about choosing what deserves your attention and letting the rest go. One of the most powerful ways to cut out the noise is by learning to say no. Now, this can be difficult because we're often afraid of disappointing others or missing out. But here's the truth. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your priorities, you're saying no to something that does. Think about that. When you agree to one more meeting, one more social obligation, one more task that doesn't serve you, you're giving up precious time and energy that could be spent on what truly matters. So the next time someone asks for your time or your attention, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, does this align with my priorities? Does this help me focus on what really matters? If the answer is no, then give yourself permission to say no. Now, I know this isn't always easy. In a world that prizes productivity, saying no can feel like failure. But it's not failure, it's wisdom, it's clarity, it's knowing that your time and energy are finite. Remember, every no to a distraction is a yes to what truly matters. Another powerful tool in cutting out the noise is something many of us have heard of, but few have truly tried: a digital detox. Our phones, our laptops, our tablets, they are incredible tools, but they're also the source of so much noise. Constant notifications, emails, messages, updates, they keep us on edge, always reacting, always responding. And here's the thing, when you're constantly reacting, you're not creating, you're not focusing, you're not living in. Try a digital detox. Start small, maybe just a few hours, maybe one day a week. Turn off your devices, unplug, and see how it feels. You'll be surprised at how much mental clarity and peace you gain when you step away from the constant digital noise. And in that space, you'll find room for the things that matter. Real connections, real thoughts, real moments of peace. What happens when you cut out the noise is that your mind starts to quiet down. You become more present, more focused. You start to notice things you hadn't before, the things that have real value, the things that make you feel alive, connect. What would happen if you took away just one distraction today? Would you lose something valuable, or would you gain something far more precious? Your focus, your energy, your clarity? The beauty of cutting out the noise is that it's something you can do right now. It doesn't require a huge life change or some grand gesture. It's simply a matter of making small, intentional choices. Choices like turning off your phone during dinner, saying no to an unnecessary meeting, or spending a few moments in silence each day. These small acts add up, and before you know it, you'll find yourself with more time, more energy, and more focus for what truly matters. And now that we've talked about cutting out the noise, the next question is, how do we keep that focus once we've found it? How do we maintain clarity in a world that's always pulling us in different directions? Let's talk about that next, because once you've cleared the distractions, it's not enough to simply coast along. You need to build systems, habits, and a mindset that keep you grounded in what truly matters. So we've cut out the noise, we've made space for what really matters. But how do we keep that focus? How do we ensure that the clarity we've gained today doesn't fade as we get pulled back into the chaos of daily life? The truth is, focus is like a muscle. It needs regular exercise to stay strong. You can't expect to stay clear and focused by making one decision to cut out distractions. It's a practice, one that requires consistency, reflection, and intention. And just like with any muscle, if you don't use it, it weakens. The good news is the more you practice focus, the stronger it becomes. But how do we build that focus muscle? The first step is setting clear goals. Now, I'm not talking about vague aspirations like, I want to be successful or I want to be happy. I mean specific, concrete goals that reflect your true priorities. For example, if family is one of your top priorities, a clear goal might be, I will spend 30 minutes every evening fully present with my children, no distractions. Or if personal growth is important to you, it could be, I will dedicate 15 minutes a day to reading or learning something new. These kinds of goals give you direction. They help you stay focused on what truly matters day in and day out. But you have to revisit your goals regularly. It's easy to set a goal and then forget about it as life gets busy. This is why regular reflection is so important. Take time, maybe once a week or once a month, to sit down and review where you're at. Ask yourself, am I still focused on my priorities? Am I making progress toward my goals, or have I gotten sidetracked? This reflection is your course correction. It's your way of making sure you stay on track, even when life tries to pull you off. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What happens when we lose focus? What happens when, despite our best intentions, we drift back into old habits, get consumed by distractions, or let the noise creep back in? Because it will happen. None of us are perfect. We will all, at some point, lose focus. The important thing is how quickly we can recognize it and course correct. Think about it like driving a car. When you're driving, you don't always stay perfectly in the center of your lane. You make constant adjustments, small turns of the wheel, gentle corrections to keep the car on track. Focus works the same way. It's not about never getting distracted or losing your way. It's about noticing when you do and gently steering yourself back toward what. One of the best ways to stay focused is through accountability. This could be a friend, a partner, or even a mentor. Someone who knows what your priorities are and who can help keep you on track. We all need someone in our corner. Someone who can remind us of what we're working toward, especially when the distractions of life become overwhelming. Having someone who can ask, are you staying true to your priorities? Can make all the difference. It's not about judgment or pressure. It's about having support in your commitment to what matters most. But focus isn't just about setting goals and being accountable. It's also about building habits that support your priorities. You see, habits are powerful. They shape our lives more than we often realize. When you build habits that align with your priorities, staying focused becomes second nature. For example, if health is one of your priorities, making exercise a daily habit ensures that it remains a focus without requiring constant will. If personal growth is important, making reading or learning a daily habit keeps that priority at the forefront. What happens when we lose focus? When we let distractions take over? When we drift back into old habits? When we stop paying attention to what matters most? The answer is we start to feel that same sense of overwhelm, frustration, and dissatisfaction that we talked about earlier. We find ourselves busy but unfulfilled. We start chasing things that don't really matter. And in doing so, we let go of the things that you can always come back. Losing focus is not the end. It's just a signal that it's time to refocus, to realign your actions with your value. You might drift off course, but with awareness and intention, you can always course correct. This is why regular reflection is so important. It helps you notice when you've gotten off track and gives you the opportunity to make adjustments before you've gone too far. And every time you bring yourself back to focus, you're strengthening that focus muscle. You're training yourself to stay aligned with what really matters. Now, as you continue to build your focus, I want to share one final thought. Staying focused on what matters isn't just about improving your life. It's about something much bigger than that. When you focus on what truly matters, when you live your life aligned with your values, you become a better version of yourself. And that better version of you has a ripple effect on the people around you. When you are clear and focused, when you are living in line with your priority, you are more present with the people you love. You bring more energy and passion to your work. You inspire others to focus on what matters in their lives. Your actions, your choices, your focus, these things don't just impact you. They impact your family, your friends, your community. Staying focused isn't just an individual pursuit. It's a way of contributing to the world. When we focus on what truly matters, we lift up the people around us. We set an example for others, showing them that it's possible to live a life of meaning and purpose, even in the midst of distractions. What really matters to ask themselves those same questions? What really matters to me? What are my true priorities? And in doing so, you create a ripple effect that goes far beyond your own life. So, as we come to the end of this conversation, I want you to remember this. Staying focused on what matters is a daily practice. It requires intention, reflection, and sometimes course correction. But it's worth it, because when you stay focused on what truly matters, you create a life that's not just successful, but meaningful. A life that's not just busy, but fulfilling. And in doing so, you have a positive impact on everyone around you. So, let's make the decision to keep coming back to what matters, no matter how many times we get distracted. Let's keep building that focus muscle, knowing that each day, each moment, is an opportunity to realign ourselves with what's truly important. And in doing so, let's create lives of purpose, clarity, and connection, not just for ourselves, but for everyone we touch. Now, I want you to consider something that goes beyond just your own life. What happens when you start focusing on what truly matters? What happens when you live in alignment with your values, your priorities? You begin to create a ripple effect, a wave that touches not just your life, but the lives of those around you. It's not just about what you gain from cutting out the distractions, from living with purpose and clarity. It's about how your actions, your focus, affect everyone in your orbit. Let's think about the people in your life right now. Family, friends, colleagues, perhaps even strangers you meet in passing. Each of us is part of a larger network of connections, whether we realize it or not. And each decision we make, each time we choose to focus on what's important, has the potential to influence those connections. Imagine for a moment who in your life could be positively affected if you truly focused on what matters. I'll give you an example. Think about someone like Rosa Parks. Her decision to stand firm in her beliefs, to focus on what truly mattered to her, didn't just change her life. It became a catalyst for an entire movement. She wasn't seeking fame or recognition. She was simply living according to her core values, and in doing so, she inspired millions. Her focus on equality, justice, and dignity rippled outward, touching not only those close to her, but countless people across the world. One person's unwavering commitment to what mattered sparked change on a global scale. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a Rosa Parks to make a difference. In fact, it's often the smaller, quieter acts of focus that have just as profound an impact. A parent who chooses to be fully present with their children, despite the distractions of work and social media, creates a home filled with love and security. That child grows up feeling valued, supported, and confident. Qualities that they'll carry with them into every future relationship and interaction. A colleague who focuses on collaboration and kindness at work fosters a culture of mutual respect, lifting the morale of an entire team. These actions might seem small in the moment, but they ripple outward in ways we can't always see. Who is watching you right now? Who is observing the way you live your life, whether you realize it or not? It might be your children, your spouse, your friends, or even a co-worker you don't talk to much. But the way you show up in the world, the things you choose to focus on, send a message. And here's the beautiful part. When you focus on what really matters, you give others permission to do the same. Think about the people who inspire you. What is it about them that draws you in? Often, it's their clarity, their conviction. They seem to know who they are and what's important to them, and that focus is magnetic. It's as if they're holding up a mirror, showing you what's possible in your own life. And just as others inspire us, we have the power to inspire others, not by preaching, not by demanding change, but simply by living in alignment with our values. Let me share another story. There's a businessman I once knew, by all accounts, was living the successful life. He had wealth, a thriving company, everything you'd think someone would want. But he realized one day that in chasing external success, he'd lost sight of what truly mattered to him: his family, his health, his own sense of fulfillment. So he made a change. He restructured his company to allow himself more time at home. He focused on his physical and mental well-being, and he committed to being fully present with his loved ones. The impact: not only did his family life improve, but his business flourished as well. His employees noticed the shift in him and felt more empowered to seek balance in their own lives. His decision to focus on what mattered created a ripple effect that improved the lives of everyone around him. So, who in your life could benefit from you focusing on what truly matters? It might be someone you haven't even thought of yet. It might be someone you don't even know is watching. But I promise you, when you make the choice to live with focus and intention, it's not just your life that will change. You'll start to see that ripple effect unfold in unexpected and beautiful ways. This ripple effect brings us to something even larger: the idea of legacy. What do you want to leave behind? What will people remember you for? I'm not talking about achievements in the traditional sense, awards, titles, or wealth. I'm talking about the deeper legacy, the impact you leave on the hearts and lives of others. Because at the end of the day, that's what truly matters. It's not the distractions, the superficial successes. It's the relationships you build, the love you give, the example you set. So as we move forward, I want you to hold on to this idea of the ripple effect. Every time you make a choice to focus on what's important, you're not just improving your own life. You're creating a ripple that touches everyone around you. You're inspiring others to live with focus, purpose, and clarity. And that's a legacy worth leaving behind. As we reflect on the choices we make every day, it's essential to consider their long-term impact. What do those choices say about us? Where do we choose to spend our time and energy? Each decision we make contributes to our legacy, shaping how we are remembered. So I ask you, when people remember you, what will they say mattered most in your life? Think about that for a moment. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of daily life, the meetings, the deadlines, the endless to-do list. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, what truly defines us? Is it our career achievements, the possessions we've accumulated, or is it something deeper? Let's take a look at a remarkable figure in history, Nelson Mandela. His life is a testament to the power of focus and commitment to one's core values. Mandela spent 27 years in prison, yet he never lost sight of what mattered most to him: freedom, justice, and equality for his people. His unwavering focus on these values didn't just change his life, it transformed an entire nation. When people speak of Mandela today, they don't just remember a politician or a leader. They remember a man who stood for what was right, who inspired millions, and who left behind a legacy of hope and resilience. Now, this doesn't mean you have to become a global icon to leave a lasting impact. The legacy we leave can be found in our everyday choices and interactions. It could be a parent who dedicates time to their children, instilling values of kindness and empathy. It could be a mentor who guides others, sharing wisdom and encouraging growth. It's about living a life that aligns with your values and inspiring those around you to do the same. As we think about our legacies, it's important to recognize that every small action counts. You may never know the full extent of your impact, but when you focus on what truly matters, you set in motion a chain reaction of positivity and inspiration. Now let's transition into the conclusion of our time together. We've navigated through the noise of life, explored the significance of personal priorities, and uncovered the broader impact of focusing on what matters. As we wrap this up, I want you to reflect on the freedom that comes from releasing distractions and centering on what truly counts. Freedom is an interesting concept, isn't it? We often think of freedom in terms of choices, the freedom to choose our careers, our relationships, our lifestyles. But real freedom comes from within. It's the liberation we feel when we let go of the trivial and embrace the essential. When we stop allowing external pressures to dictate our lives, we open ourselves to a world of possibilities. We gain the freedom to pursue what we love, to build meaningful connections, and to live in alignment with our true selves. So as we conclude, I invite you to consider this final question. What will you do starting today to focus on what really matters? It could be as simple as setting aside time to connect with a loved one, reevaluating your daily habits, or creating a plan to align your actions with your values. The choice is yours. Let this be a call to action. Take immediate steps toward a more focused, meaningful life. The world needs your unique contributions, your energy, your passion. When you focus on what truly matters, you not only enrich your own life, but also inspire those around you to seek out their own clarity and purpose. Remember, life is not just about the noise, the busyness, or the distractions. It's about the moments that matter, the connections we make, the love we share, the legacy we leave behind. So go forth with intention and purpose. Embrace the freedom of focusing on what matters most, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never thought possible.